friends. Welcome to the Kids Ministry Circle podcast. Kids Ministry Circle is a community for kids ministry leaders to be encouraged and equipped to love and serve the local church. I'm your host, Lauren Jackson. And one of the things I love about this space in this podcast is that we get to hear from so many leaders who are actively serving in vocational ministry in the local church context. But every once in a while, we get to hear from other experts in the field that are serving and partnering with those ministry leaders. And that is exactly what we get to do today. Our guests for the podcast are Dr. Denise Kjesbo. She is the professor and the program director for the Master of Arts in Children's and Family Ministry at Bethel Seminary. And we're joined by Shelley Henning, who is the associate director of the Nurturing Faith Collective at Bethel Seminary. We talk about what ongoing education can look like, how to decide if seminary is right for you, and the number of options available at seminaries, but specifically Bethel Seminary. They share so much wisdom and experience when it comes to the importance of growing in your knowledge and actively participating in the local church. This conversation was truly a gift, and I know you're going to love it. But before we jump into the conversation today, I want to invite you to participate in the Kids Ministry Circle Spring Cohort. Our Spring Cohort is 9 weeks of group coaching, or what I like to call a virtual table for kids ministry leaders to build community, share ideas, gain a new perspective, grow in their leadership gifting, and feel less alone in ministry. Registration will kick off at the beginning of January, but I want to give our podcast listeners the opportunity to reserve their spot first. Sign up using the link in the show notes so that you can pre-register for our spring cohort so you get first access to sign up. We are excited to be offering 2 spring cohort sessions this year, and I know that they will fill up fast. We cannot wait for the spring season, and we hope that you can join us. Now, on to my conversation with Denise and Shelley. Shelley and Denise, welcome to the podcast. I am so excited that you guys are here. Why don't we start off our conversation just by you guys quickly introducing who you are and maybe what your role is right now, just so that people can kind of connect voice to a name. So Denise, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So my title is Dr. Denise Muir Kjesbo. So I am the program director and professor for the Master of Arts in Children's, Youth, and Family Ministry at Bethel Seminary.
Great. Okay, Shelley, your turn.
Hi, my name is Shelley Henning, and I am the co-founder of an organization called Growth Rings, which is tools to help parents with spiritual formation for their families in the home.
That's awesome.
And she's a Master of Arts in Children's, Youth, and Family Ministry degree graduate from Bethel's program. So that's why I asked her to join us today.
Yeah, so we can call her Master Shelley. That's what we'll call her.
Okay.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so excited to have this conversation today just about the idea of ongoing education, just talking about what this looks like to even pursue education further from maybe a bachelor's degree or whatever. I know there's programs further at Bethel past the master's program. And so just what it looks like to continue education. And I'm so excited, Denise, for you to be here to share what the program looks like. And then Shelley, for you to be here to kind of speak into, hey, I did the program. Here's what it actually looked like from a student perspective. So I would love for our listeners to get to know you guys a little bit more. So Denise, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? How did you get started in the world of children and family ministry? And then maybe how you ended up in this higher education environment?
Sure. So I grew up in a very conservative church context where women were not employed in ministry. And when I started hearing God's call in my life to follow him into ministry, I went to various people to talk about what I was sensing. And basically I was told 2 things. You will either marry a pastor or you will become a missionary on the foreign field, which was the awful language we used at that time. And what I couldn't figure out was how my call to ministry could be contingent upon who I married or where I served. So I continued to try and listen well to the voice of God, went to college, continued to listen. And it was actually in a course at Bethel Seminary called Women in Men in Ministry that I describe it as if I had sound deadening headphones on and God was calling me, but I couldn't hear him. And in that course, those headphones came off and I could clearly hear God's call to follow him in ministry. So fast forward a bit, I ended up going to seminary with my husband. We're both ordained clergy, and I pursued a Master of Divinity with a focus in family ministry at that point. But I really thought that I would do more pastoral care or associate pastor. Way back then, the only place women could serve in ministry was in children's ministry. So I was like, I don't want to go there because that's where they want to put me, which isn't a very good attitude, right? That isn't a very Christian attitude. But what I did was I walked through open doors. And the open doors were in children's ministry. And I found out, oh my goodness, I love this. This fits. This is me. It fit together my background in psychology and developmental studies, my interest obviously in Bible and theology and the ministry world. And it was just like a glove that fit. It was like, oh, thank you, Lord. So when I quit kicking and screaming, I found out children's ministry was perfect for me. So I've been serving in children's ministry really since I graduated from seminary many, many years ago. Then I got a call from the seminary I graduated from asking me to consider coming back and serving as a faculty member. So that started the journey for me towards my doctorate, which I got at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School at that time, International University now. Doctorate in education, and I worked at a seminary in Sioux Falls, South Dakota for 13 years, and then for the last 23 years at Bethel Seminary. So the last 36 years I have been teaching in the graduate school context. And I want to mention, I also simultaneously serve in the local church. I have always served in the local church. Yep. I've never kind of distanced myself from the local church because I think it's absolutely crucial for seminary professors to be informed by ministry practice. So I'm ordering curriculum and training teachers and filling in when nobody shows up and taking those Saturday night calls and emails and sitting in staff meetings and leading Christmas programs and running VBS. I'm doing all that. And I'm also teaching at the graduate school seminary level because the two inform each other and breathe life into each other.
Yes.
So that's a bit about me. I have 2 grown kids. I have 4 grandkids, and I'm way too young for this, but I have 2 great grandchildren as well, 2 great grandsons who are 1 year old and 1 month old. So we have a very beautiful and full family, which we absolutely adore. So my husband's a pastor, as I mentioned. So we've been in ministry together since the beginning. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks, Denise. There's so many questions that come to my brain, but one thing that we'll touch on here in a little bit of just this idea of being in higher education, being in seminary, being either a professor or a student, but also being in the local church and having your feet in both arenas because and I'm sure both of you can relate to this. So much of kids ministry has changed. Even when you think back to 3 years ago, like it just is constantly changing so fast. And we want the education space to know what's going on in the local church space. And those two, I love what you said, Denise, of those two really inform each other. And I think that's just such an important thing to think about. And we'll talk about that there in a little bit. But Shelley, why don't you kind of talk us through maybe how you kind of entered into this space? And then I would love to know why. What was your decision-making process to enter into higher education and into the seminary space?
Sure. So I had volunteered in children's ministry probably since I was 12 years old. I started serving in the nursery, but I never actually intended that would be a lifelong calling. And after my first child was born, the goal was just to find a job where I would be able to stay home with him. And there happened to be a role at my church that opened up after some pretty tough circumstances where the children's ministry director or Christian education director at the time stepped aside. And I was just supposed to come in and help them get through this season of transition. And more and more responsibility as I took on. Eventually, they just said, hey, why don't you just take over this role of Christian education director, which was a really huge thing because I didn't have a degree. I hadn't gone to school. So God just kept opening doors for me, and I just kept seeking to follow him. And so I moved from that role to a larger church directing children's ministry. And so I've served in multiple church contexts, and then I felt called to start training children's ministry leaders. And so worked for a number of training organizations that worked to educate, do online courses, pastoral training for children's ministry leaders. And I greatly enjoyed that. And I, through all of this, continued, just as Denise said, to continue to serve in the church while I was working to train leaders, and just to stay informed as to what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I very much enjoy it. Finally ended up starting my own ministry business. And one day, as Denise and I had kind of remained connected, got a call, and she said, "Hey, are you ready to take the next step in your leadership journey?" And all of this time, so we're talking almost 20 years serving in children's and family ministry, I couldn't say no. I remember saying to my husband, "I don't know why, but I have to do this."
Yeah.
And so I started my journey in the MACFM program at Bethel.
That's awesome. What a great story. And we'll make sure, as people are listening, we'll link to all the things in the show notes. So all the things that Denise, you mentioned, Shelley, you mentioned, we'll make sure that people have all the information to continue to do their own research and follow along with what you guys are doing. But I would love for us to kind of take a little bit of a deep dive into the program. What does it look like? What are the courses like? What books are you reading? Kind of walk us through, okay, if I was to say yes to do this, what am I actually signing up for?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll jump in and tell you kind of the program layout, and I've got a little show and tell that's kind of exciting, so you can wait for that. But here's how the program is laid out. We meet fall and spring semesters, and then in this program, you would do one summer course. So it's fall, spring, spring, summer, fall, spring, and you're done. 2 years if you do it full time. Maybe I should back up and just say at Bethel Seminary, we have a 3-center philosophy of education. We think we need to be developed in the area of biblical and theological foundations. That's absolutely critical, that we know our Bible and we know our theology. I always say children's and family ministry leaders need to be the best Bible scholars and the best theologians because the kids will believe whatever you tell them. And if you teach them incorrect Bible or incorrect theology, we won't find that out for maybe 10 years or more. And by then, sometimes it's too late because by then they've left the church. So we need the best and the brightest in children's and family ministry. And that's what I think all of you in this podcast listening world are. You are the best and the brightest. And you deserve the opportunity to deepen your understanding in Bible and theology and truly have a good understanding of Bible and theology that undergirds your journey of ministry. But you also need to be developed in the area of personal and spiritual formation. When people crash and burn in ministry, it's not because they couldn't parse a Greek verb. It's because something happened in their personal life that they had not tended to, that worked its way out in ministry, or they stopped growing in their walk with Jesus. And the fervor and the currency of their relationship with Jesus had grown stale. So we want people to tend their personal and spiritual formation. And then we want them to be developed in their realm of leadership. So for us, that's children's and family ministry. So those 3 centers are absolutely crucial and are integrated into all we do: Bible and theology, personal and spiritual formation, and leadership development in children's and family ministry. So there are 9 courses in the degree program. Each of them are 4 credits long. You would have 5 children's, youth, and family ministry courses, 2 Bible courses, 1 theology course, and 1 spiritual formation course. So you can see how there's this balance: 5 CFM courses, 4 Bible theology and personal formation. So the CFM courses are Intro to Children's, Youth, and Family, Family Ministry, Teaching Learning Process, Leadership in Children's, Youth, and Family, Pastoral Care, Then the Bible courses are hermeneutics, which is interpreting the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, and theology, and then a personal and spiritual formation class. And in terms of the books, again, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, there's a little bonus. But these are the books for the first
there they
course.
are.
There they are. They're the books for the first course, the intro course. So you'll read
my
anywhere
goodness.
from 4 to 6 books per course over 16, 17 weeks. And we have a variety. Like the first book they read is called Generation Alpha. So it's talking about who are these kids. The next one is kind of the classic text, Children Matter by Scotty May and Catherine Stonehouse and Linda Cannell, who is my doctoral professor. And Scotty was in the program with me. Then Joining Children on the Spiritual Journey by Catherine Stonehouse, a developmental text. Then we get into the deep, heavy, The Child in the Bible book, which is written by biblical and theological scholars. Then we think about our own spiritual journey and our personal journey, and we talk about mentoring, and we develop a mentoring constellation that goes with us through a year. And then we finish by having a seat at the window and looking at the world of children's ministry beyond the borders of the United States by reading Wes Stafford's Too Small to Ignore. So that's just one class to kind of give you a feel for, we have a blend of scholarly textbooks and practitioner textbooks. We're updating all the time. Students love the books they get to read. It's the kind of thing where I always thought I should read a book about this, but I don't have time. Well, now you have to take time. And here's the good news. You get to talk about it with other people. It's like a book club on steroids.
Yes.
So,
that's how you describe it.
Yeah. And so just one more thing I would say. You, in terms of the workload, you take 2 courses in the spring, 2 courses in the fall, spring, and then 1 course during the summer. And then you do that again the next year. It takes, if you do it called full-time on that pace, it takes 15 to 20 hours a week, but you can do it whenever you want to because it's asynchronous, meaning you pop in after you put the kids to bed at night and work for an hour or 2, or you pop in over your lunch hour at work, or you take your day off and you do some work on it whenever it works in your schedule. There are very few synchronous times where you have to be online with us at a particular time. So whenever it works in your day. And what students do is they stop watching mindless television. They stop they carve out their schedules so that they have time for this meaningful work. And of course, you can also scale back to 1 course, which would be 8 to 10 hours a week. And Shelley can tell you more about how that all worked for her as a student. But maybe I'll throw it to Shelley now to talk about her experience of the overview from a student perspective.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. So I did take 2 courses at a time, the full-time load. It averages 15 to 20 hours a week. There were certain texts that Denise had mentioned too, like The Child in the Bible is a little bit more scholarly of a voice. And so it takes a little bit more time to go through, but so engaging and really fascinating that I've even heard other students say that book was very intimidating, but it was my favorite book. There's just so much to be learned from these. You actually find yourself looking forward to taking that time to just read and engage and take in information. And then, like Denise said, it's asynchronous. So you're connecting with your colleagues or your cohort, and you're getting to hear their voice and their perspective, plus also putting in your own. And that expands what you learn through reading, just hearing things that I may not have noticed, but somebody else pulled out that actually taught me a lot or opened a door of understanding to me that I hadn't recognized before. So I really, really enjoyed looking forward to that time. Like you said, you can, it's hard, right, to make those balanced choices like, oh, I'm going to have to give up my, personal TV time or what that might look like. But I found myself looking forward to it. Just great. There was none that were not worth my time. None that I didn't have transformation from. And that includes not just the children's and family ministry courses, but even hermeneutics, Old and New Testament theology. Discovering so much about myself too was important to that process.
Yeah.
And one thing
that's so good.
One thing I didn't mention is just the importance of the cohort. So you go through the
Yeah.
program with a group of people, and that
Okay.
cohort becomes your lifeline. They become your friends, they become your colleagues that you get to bounce things off of. You meet people from all over the United States and sometimes around the world that you never would have met if you didn't do this program. And you share the journey together. And for some, they develop lifelong friendships, which are just amazing. So you don't have to do it alone. Even though you're online, there's a strong community emphasis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's so great. Thanks for sharing. What I loved to see, I love to see the book list, because so many times on like different Facebook groups or different conversations, kids ministry leaders are asking the question, what are your top kids ministry books? What are your top books? What do you recommend to read? And all of those books, Denise, that you just mentioned are nowhere on these lists.
Yes. Yes.
And it's just, it like got me thinking of like, oh, well, there's a whole world of kids ministry and family ministry books that are not even being tapped into because they're not hitting the mainstream like market. And I think that's such a gift in seminary, and even in the like theological environments that I've been in. Like there's books that have been introduced to me that I'm like, how have I never read this before? Like, how come nobody has ever given this to me or encouraged me to read this? And it's just expanding your like brain and view of just knowledge and writers and researchers and theologians and different people who have been in the world of kids ministry, either vocationally or like on the mission field. There's just a lot more to learn than most people think. And I think that's just so encouraging, because if Denise, if you were to show me the list of books that I have already in my bookshelf, I'd be like, well, I have those. I've read those. Like what else can I learn? But just there's just like when you go to the scriptures, you'll never learn everything. There's always more to learn. And I feel like that too, sometimes with kids ministry, is us as leaders, there's always more to learn and there's always more to explore. And it was encouraging to me to kind of see, and I think we'll talk about this in a little bit, but just this idea of sometimes even that pastoral care class, most people in kids ministry don't have that. They don't have a background in counseling. And I was lucky enough to have a background in child and family psychology. And so I felt a little bit more prepared, but no one can really prepare you to journey with a family who's suffering. And I love that was an addition to the course load of like, hey, we're going to try and equip you as much as we possibly can and have you go through this pastoral care class, because that's such an important aspect that I think is overlooked a lot in family ministry. Most of the time think that senior pastors or executive pastors need to have that pastoral care. And they do. They absolutely do.
Sure.
But sometimes kids ministry leaders are the first ones to know of things.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And are the first ones to hear of something that's happening in the home. And they're on the front lines of a lot of those conversations. And so I just think that is so important. I kind of want to shift gears a little bit. Talk to us about maybe for those people who are considering seminary, or is seminary for everyone? Like, how do you decide, or how do you, Denise, if you're talking to someone who's considering it, Shelley, for you making that decision, you kind of mentioned a little bit of your story already, but should everybody try and go to seminary? How do you engage that conversation with people who are maybe on the fence or trying to decide?
Here's what I would say. Everybody should be growing in their leadership development. Now, the way they do that might be different. I think seminary is for some people. It's probably not for everyone, but it's for some people. And it's for the people who want to go deeper, who want an integrated educational experience. Some people who are, like Shelley said, I couldn't say no. I didn't know why, but I needed to pursue seminary. And that integrated, it's for people who've gone to conferences and feel like they've done the conference circuit. They've listened to the webinars and they're like, okay, what else is there? Or the people who say, I could teach that workshop better.
Yes.
So maybe what they need to do is go strengthen their leadership so they'll be invited to take those and lead those workshops, rather than feeling like they have something to give, but no one's giving them opportunities necessarily to give. So that's what seminary is for. But I would also say we have at Bethel different ways for you to enter in. So you can join a master's level 2-year degree program But you can also take a graduate certificate in children's, youth, and family, which is only 3 courses. So instead of 9 courses, it's 3, and it takes a year to do. You only take 1 course at a time. It slows it down, lets you dip your toe in the water. And then when you complete that, you can just go on your merry way and say, that was a great experience. Or you can say, I want more. And all of those courses fold right into your master's program. Or if you're not ready to come to seminary for a certificate level, you can go to some of our ministry partners. We partner with the International Network of Children's Ministries, which hosts Children's Pastors Conference in Orlando every year.
Yep.
We offer 3 certificates with them. A certificate, they're called Engage certificates. Engage certificate in children's ministry, in family ministry, and in pastoral care. And those are, what we do is we take one of our courses and we stretch it over 9 months. Still use the same platform that we use in the program, use many of the same textbooks. We gear it a little more to practitioners because most people who do the certificates don't come on to the seminary, but some do. And for those who do come on to seminary, that certificate that they do with INCM through Children's Pastors Conference transfers in as 1 course credit or 2 or 3, depending on how many they take. So there are places for people to jump in if they want to take a certificate in children's ministry and stretch it out, over 9 months. Or if they want to jump into seminary, but only take 3 courses, or if they want to do the full master's. And then we also have something called Seminary for Everyone at Bethel Seminary, which is a 4-week class that is online. And it'll be in the show notes, a link to it. And there are a variety of topics that are taught by seminary professors. I just looked today, the ones that are coming up are leadership and soul care in the 21st century and scripture at the crossroads, how the Old Testament is used in the New Testament. That's coming up in January.
Ooh.
Then we'll have 2 more courses in June for a month and 2 more courses in October. So those are non-credit. They just give you kind of a little bit of a taste of seminary without any credit implications. Although if you're a seminary student, you can take those courses for credit. So anyway, there's lots of places to jump in along the way. We're trying to make seminary accessible, affordable, doable for whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't think I realized that you guys were the ones who are connected with INCM. I have lots of friends over there, and I'm heading out to CPC in a couple weeks, which is super exciting.
I'll be there.
You'll be there?
Yep. Come.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. I'll be
That's
there
so
doing the
exciting.
Engage certificate. So come find our Engage certificate or our Bethel booth, and we can see each other in person.
That will be so fun. I know I'm teaching a breakout for the first time. I'm like so excited.
Oh, nice.
So, that's so exciting. That's such a great, even those courses, those like non-credited classes, I'm like, oh, that sounds fun to me because those are not, it's like not a level of commitment that is maybe required for a certificate or seminary, but also it's like topical. And so if you are trying to learn something specific, you can look and see, oh, they have a class coming up in June or October for this topic. That's something that I'm trying to, maybe one of my goals for 2024 or something like that. And so that could be really beneficial. I think that's really great. Shelley, what about you?
Yeah.
What do you think when it comes to like, is seminary for everyone, or like how was your decision-making process as someone who's working, who like has a lot on her plate already? How did you really make the decision to be like, okay, can I actually make time for this? Is it going to be worth my while?
I felt so strongly called that I needed, just like I said, I did not know why, but I needed to do it. And so I just jumped in. I did not consider didn't consider anything else. It was a very fast turnaround too. I think Denise and I talked at the beginning of August, and courses started in the end of August. And so I didn't think, I just did. But I also had, remember, like 20 years of experience before going into that. And one of the organizations that I had worked for, actually doing training, they had a sign on the wall that said, and this is what it said: God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. think of that however you want, but they very, very firmly believed that very many people are not called to a seminary education, whether it be for time constraints or financial constraints. So were there other ways that they could be equipped for their calling? And I look at these other avenues like Seminary for Everyone or the Engage certificates as a really great way to do that. Plus, it also gives you some sort, it can be quite intimidating, I think, for anybody, especially for me. I had never been to school, to college. I didn't have a undergrad. So understanding, like, what does this look like? It helps you get your feet wet so that you can say, you know what, I think this is something that I can do and I can make time for. And I think that it's important.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I kind of want to talk about the next question that comes to mind is just this idea. And we mentioned it a little bit at the beginning of the podcast of this idea of this balancing act between higher education and being in seminary and then being in the local church. And I would love for you guys to either share your own personal stories or maybe stories of other students who have really benefited from maybe learning those foundations of kids and family ministry, or even learning, like going through the hermeneutics classes or Old Testament and New Testament, and then like that impacting their role in the local church, or just how in your experience you have seen that balance. Because a lot of times people kind of play this game of, well, experience is what matters in vocational ministry, and you grow by experiencing things, and you don't experience being in ministry when you're sitting in a classroom kind of thing. And so I would love for you guys to share some stories or some thoughts on, like, what does that look like? How do you guys balance that? Obviously, both of you guys are actively participating in the local church. And how do you kind of continue to help your students balance those two?
Yeah, I would just say, I think one of the unique things about Bethel Seminary's MA in Children's, Youth, and Family is that we require all of our students to be in ministry while they're in seminary. Okay. So they have to be in ministry at least 15 hours a week. So you can't be in our degree program unless you're serving in ministry. Most of our students are full-time in ministry. The remaining are part-time in ministry, paid positions. And then we have some who are volunteer leaders who lead the ministry of their church but aren't paid for it. So they're all in positions of influence in their church context. So that's a requirement. And here's what happens. While you're in seminary, while you're in ministry simultaneously, all your questions change. It breathes life into the ministry context. Here's what professors say about students from our program. They say they ask different kinds of questions because it's not theoretical. It's like, I need to figure out how to deal with this with leaders I'm working with, this week, or I need to plan a leadership retreat 3 months from now, and I need help with this now, So all of our projects in the Children's and Family Ministry degree program are targeted for you to do in your ministry setting. So for instance, I just finished grading all the papers. They're not theoretical papers. They're like, one student wrote a paper a project where she developed a 6-week course for expectant parents in her church, led by mentoring couples and then culminating in a celebration event with a child dedication service. And so it's tied to your ministry. Like right now, your project is tied to your ministry. So you can develop your project. Here's what students say. I'm finally doing what I've wanted to do for a long time, but I didn't have the prompt to do it, and I didn't have the support and the feedback to do it as well as I possibly could have without this Bethel program. So people write training programs, they write sermons, they write teacher development things, they write curriculum, they preach sermons, they do a variety of things, they develop parent groups. But they're all for the local church. So it's tied intrinsically to local church ministry or ministry that you're a part of. They have to be hand in hand in order for it to be effective. That's why we require people to be in ministry, because our projects all turn us back to the local church. So it's not
That's
either
so
or.
good.
Got to be both things.
That's so good, because so many times, this was a lot of our experience of people who we knew who graduated from their undergrad at like wherever they went. And then they went to seminary and then they jumped into vocational ministry.
Right.
And there was like this
Yes.
disconnect of like, well, you have been in school for the last 8 years and now you're just stepping into vocational ministry for the first time. And it's like mind blowing because they're like, oh, what I know, my head knowledge doesn't really line up with the people that I'm working with who are unique and everyone's broken and like all of these circumstances that are coming up with. And I just love how you guys have said, oh no, we're going to have our students actively participating in a role, in a leadership role in their church so that there is this both and. There is both learning and growing and deepening your knowledge, but also you get to put it into action on Sunday and next week and in meetings and in conversations. And I just think that's so helpful. And kind of the stories that you shared of you're giving people the language for really things probably deep in their heart that they've known. Like they've wanted to create a course for volunteers. They've wanted to partner with parents. But then what you guys are able to do at Bethel is really give them the language and the knowledge of like, here's what you didn't know. And now you get to run with it and go crazy and create all these fun things, which is so awesome.
I've had
that person.
I'm sorry. Let me just say one thing quick. I've had pastors, supervisors come to me and say, thank you so much for what you have done for our children's pastor, because our whole church has been changed because they came to seminary. It's a ripple impact that goes beyond just the children's ministry. It really can it can change staff relationships. It can change volunteer relationships. It can change relationships with parents. I mean, all of that. The ripple impact is significant and it happens simultaneously. Yeah, that's the brilliance of it. It happens simultaneously.
That personal and soul care piece is so important too, that Bethel takes time to focus on, because ministry is hard. And I think that does a great job equipping you for the challenges that are going to come up.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you guys, the last question that we always ask our guests is, if you were talking to someone who was brand new in kids or family ministry, what would be your words of encouragement or advice?
Shelley, why don't you go first?
So I would say be a learner, no matter what that looks like. It might be going to conferences, it might be seminary, but constantly engage in learning and reading.
That's awesome.
So I had a couple things. I said, first of all, tend your own spiritual journey. You can't give to others if you are not in a growing relationship with Jesus yourself. So it's so important that ministry doesn't become like a job and the Bible doesn't become like a manual, but we have to keep tending our own journey. So whatever that looks like for you, tend your own spiritual journey and then connect with others outside your local church, because that will just give you a bigger picture. And that's what I think you're doing through Kids Circle. Good for you. You're helping people connect with each other, or it might be connecting with a cohort at Bethel Seminary, or connecting through the Engaged certificates with a cohort of people from across the United States. Connect with others outside your church setting. And then I would tell them, don't try and do it alone. Ephesians 4 says we're all about equipping people for the works of service. So build a team, equip others, and then find joy. Just find joy in the ministry. Find delight, because it is the most amazing journey. So don't get so wrapped up in all the details of children's ministry that you lose sight of the joy. Keep looking for the joy and find the joy.
Yeah. What a great way to end. Keep looking for the joy. I think that's so fun and such an incredible piece of wisdom and advice. Well, ladies, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and just sharing your experience and your knowledge and just your encouragement for those who may want to jump into the seminary environment. And like I said, we'll link all the show notes. So all the things that Shelley's doing, all the ways to get in touch with Denise and learn more about Bethel, we're going to link everything in the show notes so that people can learn more and keep in touch and do all the things. Awesome. And don't forget, if you're going to CPC in a couple weeks, come see me, come see Denise, and just continue to kind of build your community of kids ministry leaders, which is so fun. Well, thanks you guys.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
I am so thankful for Denise and Shelley for joining me on the podcast and sharing their heart around higher education and ongoing learning and just continuing to grow as leaders, not only in our leadership gifting, but also in our knowledge of who God is and the scriptures. And so I just thoroughly enjoyed getting to hear their experiences, their stories, and just I hope that you feel encouraged. If seminary is the right path for you, we have listed all the links that things that Shelley and Denise talked about so that you can continue to learn more. You can continue to do more research and see if a certificate or a degree or just one of the classes that Bethel Seminary is offering is a way for you to continue to learn and grow as you lead and serve in your local church context. If you would like to learn more about how to get in touch with Denise or Shelley, don't forget to head to the show notes. Everything you need is there. Also, don't forget, you pre-register for our spring cohort. Signups will kick off on Monday, January 8th. And lastly, if you want to keep this conversation going, you can join us over on Instagram and Facebook at Kids Ministry Circle. As always, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.